What if the problem with your memory isn't just age or stress, but the systems in your brain slowly breaking down? Most people think memory is fixed, but in reality, it depends on things like blood flow, brain chemistry, stress levels, and even how your brain repairs itself. And when those systems start to slip, so does your focus, your clarity, and your ability to learn. But here's what's interesting. There are certain plants used for centuries that support those exact systems in very specific, measurable ways. And now, many of them are backed by modern research. In this video, we're breaking down 10 plants that can support memory and focus, how they work, what the science says, and what to watch out for. So make sure you stick around. Because number 5 has been shown to help your brain repair itself over time. And number 7 can improve focus in minutes without you even needing to consume it. Let's get into it. Number 1, Bacopa Monnieri. For thousands of years, Bacopa Monnieri grew along the edges of ponds and marshes across India, used by ancient scholars who believed it sharpened the mind and strengthened memory. At the time, that's all it was, tradition. Then it went through modern clinical trials, and it held up. Think of your brain like a highway system. Over time, connections break down, signals slow, and information doesn't travel as efficiently. Bacopa's active compounds, called bacosides, act like a repair crew, helping restore those connections and improve communication between brain cells. The result is simple: better recall, faster memory retrieval, and improved learning. But here's what most people get wrong. Bacopa isn't a quick fix. Unlike stimulants, it builds gradually. Most studies show the strongest results after 8 to 12 weeks of consistent use. It's less like flipping a switch and more like training a muscle. There is a catch. Bacopa can cause nausea or stomach discomfort, especially on an empty stomach. Taking it with food helps reduce this. It also has a mild calming effect. So combining it with other sedatives should be done carefully. Ancient scholars believed it worked. Modern science explains why, and while Bacopa builds slowly over time, the next plant works much faster and in a completely different way. Number 2, Ginkgo Biloba. Ginkgo biloba is one of the oldest living tree species on Earth. It survived the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs, and for centuries, it was used in traditional Chinese medicine to sharpen the mind and improve clarity. At the time, that's all it was, tradition. Then it became one of the most studied plants in the world, and it held up. Here's the simplest way to understand how it works. Your brain depends on a steady, reliable supply of blood. As that flow slows with age, memory becomes less sharp, focus drifts, and mental processing declines. Ginkgo's active compounds help counter this by improving circulation, widening blood vessels, increasing blood flow, and protecting brain cells from long-term damage. The result is better memory, stronger focus, and faster processing speed, especially in older adults or those beginning to experience cognitive decline. But there's an important catch. Ginkgo has real blood-thinning effects. It slows the body's ability to clot, which means combining it with medications like aspirin or warfarin can significantly increase bleeding risk. This isn't just a minor precaution. It's something that should be taken seriously. Ginkgo has survived for millions of years, and the evidence suggests it can help keep the brain functioning well, but only when it's used with the right awareness. But blood flow is only part of the picture, because even with perfect circulation, your brain still depends on the chemical signals that allow it to think clearly. And that's where the next plant comes in. Number 3, rosemary. Rosemary has been sitting in kitchens and herb gardens for so long that most people stop thinking of it as anything special. But in ancient Greece, students wore garlands of rosemary during exams, believing it strengthened memory. Elizabethan herbalists even called it the herb of remembrance. For centuries, that was just tradition. Then scientists started studying what it actually does to the brain, and the results were hard to ignore. Here's the key to how it works. Your brain relies on a chemical called acetylcholine to form memories, process information, and stay focused. There's also an enzyme whose job is to break that chemical down. Rosemary's active compounds help block that breakdown, so more acetylcholine stays active in your brain. In simple terms, it helps your brain hold on to the signal it uses to think clearly. This is the same general pathway targeted by some Alzheimer's medications. And studies show something even more surprising. Just smelling rosemary has been linked to measurable improvements in memory speed and accuracy. In more concentrated forms, those effects become stronger and more consistent. But there's an important catch. The small amounts used in cooking aren't the same as the doses used in research. At higher supplemental levels, rosemary can interact with blood thinners, blood pressure medications, and diuretics. Using it in food is generally safe, but concentrated use is something to approach more carefully. The ancient belief wasn't wrong. We just understand the mechanism now. But even strong signaling isn't enough if the brain is under constant stress. Because over time, stress doesn't just affect how you feel, it starts to interfere with how your brain actually functions. And that's where the next plant becomes important. Number 4, ashwagandha. Most people know ashwagandha as a stress relief supplement, and that reputation is well earned. But its effects on the brain go much deeper than just helping you feel calmer. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. When you're under chronic stress, your body produces high levels of cortisol. In the short term, that's helpful. But over time, elevated cortisol starts to damage the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming and storing memories. Think of the hippocampus like your brain's filing system. Chronic stress slowly disrupts that system, making it harder to remember, harder to learn, and harder to stay focused. Ashwagandha helps bring cortisol levels back down. And in doing that, it doesn't just reduce stress. It helps protect the part of your brain that memory depends on. Clinical studies that measure cognitive performance directly, not just stress, show improvements in reaction time, working memory, and focus under pressure. But there's an important catch. Ashwagandha isn't suitable for everyone. It should be avoided during pregnancy, and people with thyroid conditions or autoimmune disorders should speak with a clinician first, since it can influence both immune activity and hormone levels. Most people take ashwagandha to feel less stressed. What the research shows is that while it's doing that, it's also helping preserve your brain's ability to think clearly. And unlike ashwagandha, the next plant doesn't work by lowering stress. It works by directly stimulating brain growth, which makes its effects even more surprising. Number 5, lion's mane mushroom. For centuries, lion's mane was foraged in the forests of China, Japan, and Korea, used by Buddhist monks before long periods of meditation and study. At the time, that's all it was, tradition. Then researchers studied what it does to the brain, and what they found was different from almost anything else on this list. Here's the key idea. Your brain relies on a protein called nerve growth factor, or NGF. Think of it as a maintenance signal, telling your brain to repair, protect, and grow new cells. Most substances can't reach the brain to influence this. Lion's mane can. Its active compounds cross into the brain and stimulate NGF production, essentially encouraging your brain to maintain and rebuild itself. Clinical studies show improvements in memory and cognitive function after about 16 weeks. And when people stop taking it, those improvements fade. Strong evidence the effect is real. But there's an important catch. Many supplements use the mycelium instead of the fruiting body, which contains the key compounds. If it doesn't say fruiting body extract, it may not match what was used in research. What was once traditional is now being studied for its ability to support brain repair. But there's something else most people don't consider. All of this takes time, because while some plants work gradually, others can affect how your brain performs almost immediately. And that shift is where the next plant stands out. Number 6, Panax ginseng. Panax ginseng has been prized in East Asian medicine for over 2,000 years. Its name literally means all healing. For most of history, that was just legend. The science is more specific. Your brain relies on 2 key chemicals, dopamine for motivation and mental energy, and acetylcholine for memory and learning. Ginseng's active compounds, called ginsenosides, support both at once. That's what makes it stand out. In clinical studies, Panax ginseng improved working memory, reaction time, and mental performance in healthy adults. And unlike most plants on this list, some effects appear after a single dose. That kind of speed is rare. But there's an important catch. Ginsenosides need to be activated by your gut bacteria. If your gut health isn't optimal, you may not get the full benefit, which means two people can take the same ginseng and get very different results. The legend said it could heal everything. The evidence shows it can sharpen the mind, but how well it works may depend on your gut as much as the plant itself. And unlike ginseng, the next plant works in a much calmer way, but can still have a noticeable effect on focus. Number 7, peppermint. Peppermint is so familiar in toothpaste, gum, tea that most people don't think of it as affecting the brain at all. It's just a scent, something refreshing. But the research says otherwise. Multiple human studies show that simply smelling peppermint can improve alertness, attention, and working memory. People exposed to the aroma perform faster and more accurately on mental tasks. And that's without even consuming it. When taken as an extract, peppermint's main compound, menthol, helps increase acetylcholine, the brain chemical tied to memory and learning. It also provides a mild mental boost without the sharp spike and crash of caffeine. What makes peppermint unusual is this. Both smelling it and consuming it have measurable cognitive effects in controlled studies. That's rare. But there's an important catch. At higher doses, peppermint oil can cause heartburn and reflux, and it may interact with certain medications. And like most plants on this list, a simple cup of tea contains far less than the amounts used in research. One of the most effective plants for focus might be one you've been overlooking this whole time. And unlike peppermint, the next plant doesn't stimulate your brain at all. It works quietly in the background, reducing inflammation that can slowly interfere with memory over time. Number 8, turmeric. Turmeric is everywhere. Capsules, powders, drinks, which also means there's a lot of hype. So here's what actually matters for the brain. Your brain can become inflamed, and when it does, memory, focus, and clarity all decline. Turmeric's active compound, curcumin, helps reduce that inflammation. And this has been tested. In a UCLA study, adults with mild memory issues took curcumin daily for 18 months and showed improvements in memory and attention. Brain scans also showed reduced buildup of proteins linked to Alzheimer's. That's a meaningful effect. But there's a critical catch. Curcumin is very poorly absorbed. Most turmeric products pass through your body with little impact. The studies showing real results use specialized forms or combine curcumin with piperine from black pepper to dramatically increase absorption. Without that, you may not get much benefit. Turmeric isn't just hype, but it only works if your body can actually use it. And unlike turmeric, the next plant doesn't just reduce damage. It helps your brain actively build and strengthen new connections. Number 9, saffron. If you've seen our video on plants for depression, saffron was already on that list, with clinical results comparable to some antidepressants in mild to moderate cases. But there's another side to it. Saffron also has emerging evidence for memory and cognitive function. Here's how it works. Your brain relies on a growth protein called BDNF. Think of it like fertilizer for your brain cells. It helps form new connections, strengthen existing ones, and support learning and memory. Low BDNF is linked to cognitive decline. Saffron's active compounds, crocin and quercetin, help increase BDNF and protect brain cells from damage. In clinical studies, that translates into improvements in memory and attention, especially in older adults. There's also early research suggesting saffron may help slow cognitive decline in conditions like Alzheimer's, though larger studies are still needed. But there's an important catch. Saffron quality varies widely. Many products are underdosed or diluted and won't match what was used in research. Standardized extracts from reliable sources matter here more than almost anywhere else on this list. And at higher doses, saffron should be avoided during pregnancy. One plant, multiple areas of growing evidence. And so far, the results are holding up. And while saffron works through a single powerful pathway, the final plant on this list works across multiple systems at once, which is what makes it so unique. And finally, number 10, Gotu kola. Gotu kola has been called the herb of longevity, the student herb, and the memory plant across traditional medicine systems for centuries. Ancient texts describe it as something that sharpens the mind, calms the nervous system, and preserves mental clarity into old age. For most of history, that was just tradition. Now we're starting to understand why. Here's what makes it different. Most plants on this list work through one or two pathways. Gotu kola works through three. First, it improves blood flow to the brain, delivering more oxygen and nutrients. Second, it supports the growth of dendrites, the tiny branches that allow brain cells to connect and communicate. And third, it helps reduce neuroinflammation, which can quietly slow cognitive function over time. Together, those effects support memory, focus, and long-term brain health. Clinical studies show improvements in memory, attention, and processing speed, especially in older adults and those recovering from cognitive decline. But there's an important catch, and this one matters. At higher doses or with long-term use, Gotu kola has been linked to liver toxicity. This is a real documented risk. Regular use should be monitored, and combining it with other supplements or medications should be done carefully. The tradition called it the herb of the mind. The science suggests it may be one of the more complete brain support plants we have. But like anything powerful, it works best when it's used with respect. Some of these plants have strong clinical backing. Others show real promise, but still need more research before we fully understand how effective they are. The key is knowing the difference, because on the surface, they can all look the same. But when you actually look at the data, they're not even close. And understanding how each one works is what allows you to use them more effectively and more safely. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. And I'm curious, did anything on this list surprise you or change the way you think about these plants? If it did, let me know in the comments and tell me which one stood out to you the most. If you found this helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more clear, science-based breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.